At 72, Margaret stood at the edge of her garden, hands folded behind her back, watching the wind ripple through the rows of tulips. She had spent the better part of her retirement cultivating these flowers, soft reds and yellows bursting from the soil like fireworks. But lately, even the scent of fresh blooms wasn't enough to push away a growing restlessness. It wasn't her body. Sure, the knees ached a bit more and the morning stiffness lingered longer, but Margaret had always been active. She still walked the park trail every morning with her neighbor Carol. It wasn't her mind either. Her memory was sharp, her speech quick. What bothered her was the gnawing thought that she had slipped into habits that no longer served her. Habits that could steal the best years she had left if she wasn't careful. The wake-up call came from a place she didn't expect, an overheard conversation at her grandson's birthday party. "She's just stuck in her ways," her daughter whispered, thinking Margaret couldn't hear. "She's not the same anymore. It's like she's frozen." The words stung, but they rang true. That night, Margaret sat down with a cup of mint tea and made a list, not of things to do, but things to stop doing. Things that, if left unchecked, would slowly chip away at her quality of life. And so began the changes. The one, stop saying, "I'm too old for that." It was the first and most important rule she made for herself. Margaret had passed up ballroom dance lessons with Carol last year because she said her hips couldn't take it. But the truth? She'd never even tried. Fear had masked itself as wisdom. The next week, she signed up for an introductory salsa class. It wasn't easy. Her steps were stiff, and she felt silly. But when the music swelled and her partner twirled her, laughter bubbled from somewhere she thought she'd lost. 2. Stop avoiding new technology. Margaret used to hand her phone to the grandkids every time it acted up. Passwords confused her. The TV remote was a puzzle, and she still wrote checks at the grocery store. But after a long talk with her son David, she realized something. Technology wasn't going away. Avoiding it only increased her dependency. She started small, learning to send texts without help, using YouTube to find cooking videos, exploring audiobooks. It was like unlocking a new world. When she figured out how to video call her sister in Arizona, she cried. 3. Stop keeping silent about pain. For too long, Margaret brushed off her lower back aches and the ringing in her ears. She chalked it up to aging and kept quiet. But pain was not a badge of honor. When she finally mentioned it to her doctor, they discovered early signs of arthritis and recommended a simple stretch routine and a hearing aid trial. Within a month, her back improved, and the world sounded clearer than it had in years. Pain was not to be endured, it was a signal to act. 4. Stop declining invitations. Margaret had gotten into a pattern of saying no. Dinner with friends? Too tired. Church potluck? Maybe next time. Concert in the park? She wasn't sure it was her thing. But loneliness was a sly thief. It didn't arrive loudly. It settled in slowly with each declined invitation. One Sunday, Carol dragged her to a jazz brunch. Margaret expected to feel out of place. But instead, she ended up singing along, a mimosa in hand, swaying to the beat. She decided then, if someone invited her, she'd say yes, unless there was a real reason not to. No more hiding behind excuses. 5. Stop comparing to the past. It was easy to get lost in nostalgia. Margaret often looked at old photos, her late husband's smile, her children as toddlers, and felt like the best was behind her. But that mindset blurred the beauty of the present. So she started journaling, not about the past, but about today. The bluebird that visited her windowsill, the smell of rain on concrete, the way her granddaughter's hair bounced when she laughed. She realized joy didn't belong to yesterday. It was always available now. 6. Stop ignoring finances. Margaret always trusted David to take care of it all. He was a good son. But she realized it was dangerous to remain in the dark about her own money. With David's help, she reviewed her accounts, created a basic budget, and set aside a fun fund for things like spontaneous travel or surprise gifts. Gaining financial clarity gave her confidence. She wasn't rich, but she had enough. Enough to live, enough to give, and enough to breathe easier. 7. Stop believing it's too late to change. The biggest lie she'd told herself was that life was fixed now, that growth was for the young. But Margaret had changed more in those few months than she had in the last decade. She learned how to draw in a local class. She volunteered at a community center helping ESL students with reading. She even tried online dating, which frankly, was terrifying, but not without promise. She stopped thinking of herself as elderly and started thinking of herself as experienced. One breezy afternoon in late spring, Margaret stood again at the edge of her garden. But this time, her gaze lifted beyond the tulips, beyond the fence. She saw kids playing down the road, neighbors chatting, a bird dipping low over the grass. She felt alive. That evening, she took out the list she had written months ago and read it aloud. No more hiding from change, no more shrinking from life, no more waiting for too late. She folded the paper, tucked it in her bedside drawer, and smiled. Because stopping the wrong things was exactly what allowed her to start living again.